Thanks again for joining us for our CMT Connect webinar series. And I hope everyone's enjoying their summer so far. Tonight we have a special guest, Perdido, who is I've been working with for a long time now. And we'll get into his story a little bit more. But he not only is a patient, a CMT patient, but he is an expert in human biomechanics and function and movement. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen our posts over the past year or two about Chris and his programs and his organization. So he's doing incredible things in our community. And for those who don't know him yet, I'm sure you will agree with us after tonight's webinar that he's pretty incredible, and we're honored to have him tonight. Hi, Chris.
How's it going?
Good.
Thank you so much for the introduction.
Of course.
My name is Chris Perdido. I'm the CEO and founder of CytoFit and Made for Motus, a nonprofit organization. I'm a movement and performance enhancement coach. I'm a health and wellness advocate. I would say that I've become a CMT advocate also, but I like to think that I'm also expanding my reach and kind of trying to be an advocate for people with all disabilities. And I really just, I pretty much have my fingers dipped into everything related to helping people function in general, no matter what their physical capabilities are.
Right. Well, we love that. And there's plenty of work out there for you. There's no shortage of that. And just to give people a little bit of a background on your history and your CMT journey, can you tell us a little bit about your diagnosis and when you kind of first noticed symptoms of CMT and how you kind of got to where you are now?
Yes, absolutely. So I was diagnosed with CMT 1A when I was 13. I guess when I was growing up as a child, my parents saw that I wasn't necessarily, my gait wasn't the same as other kids, and I was constantly rolling my ankles and getting hurt. So finally, at the age of 13, they brought me to the doctor, and I was diagnosed with 1A, which kind of came as a shock because no one in my family that we know of has CMT. So when they told us it was hereditary, it was, kind of came as a little bit of a surprise. But yeah, I was 13. And of course, before that, as a kid, I remember thinking to myself, why can't I necessarily do the things that everyone else is doing? I can't keep up with the kids, whether it was just playing sports or running around the neighborhood, being your typical child. And I just couldn't keep up. So I knew something was wrong, I guess, but I was too young to really put it together.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people probably have similar experiences with that. So when was kind of like the turning point for you?
So I would say that I lived a because I was always getting hurt and I couldn't really do everything that was supposed to be average. I lived a pretty sedentary lifestyle after that point. So the diagnosis, I don't think that I consciously accepted that something was necessarily wrong with me. But subconsciously, it definitely led me to, being even more sedentary. I started kind of getting more into video games and stuff that didn't really require a lot of physical activity. So I guess it was my little way of kind of getting away from reality. And I really just got away from the things that interested me as a lot as a kid. So, playing sports and all that stuff, because I couldn't do it. Right. So the diagnosis definitely set me into a different direction.
Right. And did you have like any type of adaptive programs available to you at that age, or were you just kind of trying to keep up with the rest of the kids your age?
Yeah, I was just trying to keep up, honestly. When I was diagnosed, the doctor actually told me not to exercise. He told me to stay away from physical activity. So I think that was also kind of a hit that I didn't see coming. I knew that I couldn't keep up, but when they told me not to do anything, that'll, to a 13-year-old, I guess that'll do some damage. So it set me into a different path.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand. But, I think a lot of people, unfortunately, have been told similar things from their doctors and healthcare providers, and it's really unfortunate. And that's, just another reason why we want to bring just this information to the surface and spread the word and and kind of eliminate a lot of that fear and stigma around CMT and exercise and everything that kind of comes with that.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. That's
Yeah.
what I'm all about as well. But
So
so
how did you become involved in training? And
so I guess I'll give you a little bit of a timeline. I'm sure you know a lot already.
yes.
Bear with me. It's kind of a long story. So
Okay.
I would say at the age of about 17, I met my now current best friend for about the past 10 years. He was captain of the wrestling team, and he would always come into school and come into class, and I barely knew him at the time. But he would always talk to me about exercising and working out. And, you know, I always had something in the back of my head telling me, like, man, I wish I could be more like this kid. I wish I can do this. And then one day I said I had enough, and I went to the gym, bought a membership, and I walked into school the next day. I slapped my membership down on his desk, and that was it. He took me under his wing, and we started working out. You know, I started getting into kind of researching nutrition and different exercises. I was more into bodybuilding at the time, and you know, that's really what started it all, I would say. And then at the age of about 19 to 20, I started boxing. I went on to lose about 70 pounds. And I started taking things a little bit more seriously. So, you know, I was doing more research, trying to figure out ways that I could help myself. But I also started growing more of a love for, you know, health and wellness. So I started training people on the side for some side money. I would go to their houses, do your typical, you know, high intensity boxing workouts and trying to get them in shape and trying to get them to look better.
Right.
But yeah, so that was about 19 or 20. I started doing that. And then 23 to 25 was kind of there was a hard spot for me. 25, my life kind of came to a halt, but from 23 to 25, so I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm trying to think back on everything. I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I ended up blowing out my right ACL, so the ligament in my knee. And at the time, I wasn't very conscious of everything health related or my body. I mean, I was young. So I decided that it was a good idea to take performance enhancing drugs to rehabilitate myself faster so I can get back to sports and you know, boxing and whatnot. So that actually spiraled me downward into a extremely bad depressive episode. And then soon after that depressive episode, I ended up in St. Francis Hospital for heart complications. So they wanted to perform open heart surgery on me. Then they said they wanted to give me a pacemaker. That's a whole nother story. So all of that happened. Then after that, I ended up herniating 3 discs in my neck, 3 discs in my lower back. I was in unbearable pain 24/7. So I was dealing with that for a while. And then at the age of 25, I was walking through the supermarket, and literally out of nowhere, I just felt like every tendon, muscle, and ligament below both my knees was going to tear in half. And from that point on, I was wheelchair bound. So it all happened pretty quick. I'd say from 23 to 25, it was just a big downhill spiral.
Right.
And then, yeah, out of nowhere, I was wheelchair bound. And that was it.
And how long were you in a wheelchair for?
I was in the wheelchair for about a year.
So were you in pain that entire time, or was it just like atrophy and weakness?
I was in pain. Yeah. So I couldn't really get up onto my feet. Like I said, it felt like the only way I could describe it was I felt like everything was going to tear in half. So I couldn't really get onto my feet. There were some times where it felt maybe a little bit better than others. But for the most part, I was in pain 24/7. Sitting down was the only thing that kind of gave me relief. So, what were you going to say?
So tell us how you kind of rehabilitated yourself out of that.
So when I ended up in the wheelchair, you know, obviously that was like a huge shock to me, and I was in disbelief for a few weeks. And then there was one night I'll never forget where I just laid on the ground and I was screaming and I was crying, and it kind of all hit me at once, and I couldn't, you know, was like I couldn't take it anymore. Everything was going wrong for me. And then I had what I like to call my light bulb moment, where I kind of just snapped out of it, and I wiped the tears away, and I said, I'm going to get through this one way or another, just like I've gotten through everything that I have before in my life. I've dealt with a lot of turmoil. And from that point on, I started researching literally everything that I can get my hands on. So I was, we have the internet now. I was on Google looking at everything I could find on there, getting books, looking at webinars, and looking at podcasts, and literally just researching everything physiology related.
Okay.
Trying to build my knowledge on that so I could eventually help myself. And then after that year of, almost a year of being in a wheelchair, I was still new to all of that stuff. So I felt like surgery was the only way that, that was the only choice I had left.
Okay.
So I ended up going to see Dr. Matthew Roberts at Hospital for Special Surgery in Manhattan. And we decided to do double foot reconstruction. So 2 complete operations, 26 procedures, and they pretty much rebuilt me from the knees down on both sides. I got my right foot done first, or my right leg done first, and then my left leg done.
Was that because you had like deformities, or what was the surgery specifically for?
Oh yeah, it was for the deformities of my feet. And then they were saying that, everything tightened up so much that they needed to release the tendons, they needed to release the calf muscles, and kind of rebuild the feet so that it doesn't happen again.
Okay. And did you find that helped you a lot? I mean, what kind of impact did that surgery have on you?
So that's a whole nother story in itself, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess it, yes, it did help me. So I ended up, I got the surgeries, and I ended up going through the rehabilitative process. I was working with some physical therapists, but mostly for like manual therapy and massage. And then I was doing a lot of my own physical therapy on the side.
Okay.
Now, yes, I guess the surgery did help, but there were points where I would feel the pain come back. And, I was stuck asking myself, why am I feeling, it wasn't as bad, but why am I feeling this again?
Right.
What's going on? So that's really when I started using and putting everything that I've been learning into the test. I started testing everything out, and really getting on top of my nutrition, getting on top of everything. And I found that when I was on point with nutrition and all that stuff, all of a sudden I felt the inflammation kind of leave my body, and I didn't have that pain anymore. I actually did a 3-day water fast, and that pain completely went away. So then I was stuck kind of asking myself, did I need these surgeries? Is there something else going on? But again, as my knowledge grew, I kind of came to realize that everything is connected. So whatever was being exacerbated from the CMT, had systematic inflammation in my body, and my body was just responding in a bad manner. So it was putting everything together.
So what did your preliminary exercise routine look like? Like, what did you find was most effective for you as far as the rehabilitation?
So at the time, I think I was still doing more traditional rehabilitation and stuff that you would see in your physical therapy office, maybe a little bit different. It helped me, but there was a point where I hit a wall, and I wasn't progressing anymore. If anything, I felt myself regressing, and that neck pain that I had and that back pain that I had was getting worse. Again, when they reconstruct your feet, it's going to throw off your entire structure. So, I was kind of I was in a position where I hit that wall, and I had to now take a step back and ask myself, did I really know what I was doing? And the physical therapists that were helping me, they were kind of asking me to do the same things as well. So I was like, why am I hitting this wall? Why is this happening? And that's when I decided to, start traveling state to state and taking continuous educational courses, and diving even deeper into biomechanics, and again, everything physiology related, nutrition, environment, anything that you could think of, I was studying and researching it.
Okay. So it wasn't one topic specifically, it was kind of
no.
like a wide spectrum of
Yes. Yeah. So everything, I pretty much movement and exercise is my primary thing, but I definitely cover everything with clients. I go over pretty much everything. It's all connected. The entire body works as one. So, but yeah, so I started traveling and learning all that stuff. And it wasn't until I really started diving deeper into biomechanics and all of that I started seeing more results, which then raised more questions.
Results?
Oh man. So I've always worn high tops my whole life, high top sneakers. I always felt like my ankles were really unstable. Even after the surgeries, they didn't feel stable enough. And when I started changing my exercise and changing the way I approached the body, I bought my first pair of minimalist sneakers. So it feels like your feet are almost grounded.
Mm-hmm.
I went on a 10-mile hike. And after that hike, I was just like, I was never able to do this. Like, even when I thought I was at my best physical being, I still wasn't able to do anything like that. So that was eye-opening to me. And, I kind of knew something's up here. The way that I thought exercise was meant to be was not necessarily correct.
Right. And especially coming from your unique perspective, you're training, you're learning about the human body, and you're kind of using yourself as like, the test dummy and figuring out what works, what doesn't work. So I think that says a lot about the way you approach training. And I've had the advantage of training with you, and I can't really, specify as much as I want to, but it's
hard to put into words.
Yeah, it's a whole different level of training. And I've done, your general physical therapy and kind of laying on the bench and doing these kind of, sometimes they feel very monotonous movements. I never really showed much improvement. And I've also gone to the gym on my own and things like that. But the training that you provide is completely off the beaten path, and the results are real. After working with you for, it was like eight weeks at least, that first session, I definitely noticed my balance was better. I felt stronger. My endurance was better. Not just the physical side, not just the strength side, but also the information that you give as far as nutrition and what to stay away from, and the role that inflammation causes on our bodies. I think you really approach the human body as a whole, and not just, these segmented parts that we're so used to, exercising our legs and exercising this, but, the way that you explain it, can you go a little bit deeper into how our bodies work more, intrinsically than we tend to believe, or no?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that like the biggest, and this doesn't just apply to people with CMT, but the biggest misconception with exercise is that you can just choose any exercise at any given point and kind of mash them all together in this big exercise library and make a workout look real hard, and maybe you're sweating and maybe you are breaking your body down. But we have to ask ourselves, what is the purpose behind what we're doing, and what is the intent? And then to take that even deeper, if we're working towards someone's goals, are their goals even relevant to what they need rather than what they want? So that's kind of how I approach exercise and everything, where I'm not necessarily building show muscle. There is going to be physical benefits and appearance benefits to it, where you're going to look better and whatever you think better might look like. But for the most part, I'm really just getting the body to work better as one cohesive unit, and teaching someone to reciprocate both sides of their body and just function better as a whole. So again, it's kind of hard to put into words, as you know, but getting someone to use their right arm with their left leg in a certain manner that respects the way that we've evolved, or the way that we were created to move, rather than being stuck in one plane of motion, So we move in 3 different planes of motion for those of you listening. So you have the sagittal plane, frontal plane, and transverse plane. Think of transverse as rotating and 3-dimensional. So we live in the transverse plane. When we walk, we rotate, reciprocate both sides of our body. It's not to say that the other 2 planes aren't important, but where in our exercise are we taking that and applying it? You know what I'm saying? So again, like when I was doing the physical therapy when I first started, it was just me getting me to strengthen my ankle while maybe either sitting down or standing up and just going up and down on my toes. And that doesn't really relate to how we move and how we walk, all the different muscles and chains and links that work together when we take a step forward and propel off of our toes, propel off of our foot. So the exercise is more integrating from head to toe what's going on.
Right. And a lot of it is posture based, right? I mean, you're not in a machine. A lot of it involves resistance bands and pulling on one side of your body while at the same time you're pushing with the other, and almost kind of simulating the gait, right? The natural human gait cycle, but with force, so that you're really kind of like exaggerating those movements, and almost like reminding your body and your nervous system how everything works together at once instead of one, body movement at a time.
100%. So it's all, it really, it comes down to, yes, it's postural training. But people think of posture as, what do you look like when I just stand and look at you? And that's static posture. I'm more concerned with, obviously, that tells me something. But I'm more concerned with how you move and put it together during dynamic movement, because that's inevitably what we are meant to do. We're meant to walk and get from point A to point B. So I'm looking at how both sides of your body move, how both sides of your body operate.
Right.
I'm looking at, the neurological system. I'm looking at sensory input from the ground. I'm looking at anything that you could think of. All senses of the body are going to influence your posture. So even vestibular and how you, your vision, that's all going to influence as well. So I take all of that into consideration when helping someone out and putting them through a program.
So when you're approaching somebody with CMT, what are some of the challenges? Like, I know you and every client or patient has their own unique, dysfunctions and ways of, that they compensate for, the muscle loss and the weakness. And you can use myself as an example of some of the bad patterns that I've fallen into, and that we worked on.
Yeah. So again, I don't even want to say that I really treat someone with CMT necessarily different than I would treat anyone. With the knowledge that I have from having CMT myself, and I think it makes it easier for me to distinguish weakness and just being unable to do something, having the inability to do something. And I'm also able to distinguish certain compensation or compensatory strategies that people have, because I'll kind of see it in myself as well.
Right.
So it's kind of given me more of insight on what to look for in people. But it doesn't really change from individual to individual. Of course, you might need something a little bit different than someone else, but the core principles and fundamentals always remain the same.
Right.
And and those things are always what I fall back on.
Okay.
So I'm huge on basics, huge on fundamentals. Things as simple as, can you hinge your hips? Can you breathe correctly? Do you have positional awareness? Do you even know where your body is in space? Anything like that, so on and so forth. Those are basics. So no matter what your physical capability is, I can work with the highest level athlete there is, and they still don't have those things. So I say, all right, we're going to take a step back, and we're going to really smash those basics until you can own them, until you understand them. And then for those with CMT, it would be the same, except maybe they don't have the ability to to fix or correct them completely. So now my goal would be, again, I want to see that you can get from point A to point B as efficiently as possible. So if you're still going to compensate, I'm going to make sure that we create better compensatory strategies in your body so that you're able to still get from point A to point B a little bit easier than you were beforehand. Right. It might not be perfect, but we're going to create better strategies for you.
Because a lot of those compensations that we make, with me and my, as an example, I just kind of like tend to like bend forward because I don't have the quad and the hamstring strength. But a lot of those compensations can end up as, as pain, and can manifest as, a shoulder that's kind of out of whack because your entire posture is out of whack. And I think a lot of that is just, like you said, realigning the body and figuring out where you put a lot of your weight and stress, and just kind of try and readjust that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's, like you said, we always have to look for the deep. I'm always looking for the deepest root cause of every issue. So if you have, let's say, shoulder pain or neck pain, the last place that I'm looking at first is the neck or shoulder. I'm always looking at what's happening lower, what's happening in the pelvis, what's happening in the rib cage, your breathing mechanics, everything that we've talked about. Yeah. So it's it's a different approach.
Tell us a little bit more about the breathing, because I think that was one of the most fascinating parts that I learned about during my training, was the role of the diaphragm and how that, how that impacts your posture and just your everyday function. And even a lot of us with CMT, we do struggle with respiratory problems, shortness of breath, and I think that's something that we could all definitely benefit on.
Yes, for sure. So breathing, again, basics and fundamentals. We breathe about an average of, I think it was 22,000 times per day. So if you're not breathing correctly, then there's a lot of things not happening correctly. The diaphragm plays a huge role. I would say the number one role in the body as far as your movement options, so how your joints move. And then you also have to understand that breathing is regulated by the autonomic nervous system. So being able to breathe effectively is going to allow you to tap into the nervous system, which is huge. And then on top of that, just being in the proper position to breathe correctly. So like you said, you're kind of stuck leaning forward a lot, rib cage flared upward, which puts your diaphragm in this position where it has to remain flat. Okay, so when we exhale, the diaphragm domes up. When we inhale, the lungs expand and it comes down. If the diaphragm remains down, then it's now working as a postural muscle instead of a respirational muscle. All right, so we need to understand that position is going to actually influence our breathing as well. And that's why I said positional awareness and postural training, and then learning how to integrate the breathing with turning and twisting and torquing both sides of the body and reciprocating your upper body with your lower body. So breathing plays a huge role, but it's also learning how to breathe effectively during movement.
Right. And for anyone who wants more information on that, I know you've done webinars in the past on your Facebook feed and things that we can kind of source to everyone and send them a link to as well, because I know that's a whole other ball game, and you have a few other webinars that we could share too, because I know each one of these topics we could do hours on tutorials and classes and things like that. So but we just kind of wanted to really touch base on some of the basic principles, and I know a lot of people have specific questions. One of those are about weight training. I know there's a lot of question whether people with CMT should be using weights, or whether it's good for them, whether it's bad for them. What are some of your thoughts on
that? So the saying that weights are bad for people with CMT couldn't be more false. That's completely false. I think that the misconception is that, again, we're often already stuck in these compensatory patterns that put our body at risk for injury and so on and so forth. And then when we go ahead and we load our bodies with weight without really understanding what it is that we're doing, that's where problems begin to arise and injuries and everything happens. So if we understand that strength is a word that can be used in many different contexts. For me, my idea of strength is getting someone to integrate their body as one unit to become as efficient and sustainable as possible, which will then in return help them move more effortlessly and with ease. So you could think from putting a bodybuilder onto a football field, he's not going to look that good, right? Even though he's extremely strong in the gym, he's not that strong in an athletic environment. So strong is a word that can be used in many different contexts. So when I do weight training, it's more having to do with getting opposite sides of the body to connect. So I want to see that you can connect your upper right half with your lower left half, your upper left half with your lower right half. And then again, breathe optimally, understanding the fundamentals of, weight shifting and feeling your body and having the awareness. And then of course the strength, quote unquote, on top of that to control your body. So weights definitely aren't a bad thing. It's just how are you performing your weight training that is going to make or break that.
So, okay. So if, you're a CMT patient, where do you start? I mean, so many of us are doing all different types of exercise programs. We're going to the gym. We're trying to stay active because we don't want to get weaker. We want to get stronger. With this information, what would you say the next step is for someone with CMT? I mean, where should they start as far as building that foundation and covering those basics? What are some kind of basic movements or exercises, things like that they could start with?
Oh man, that's a tough one. So basic movements to start with. Again, this stuff is, and I don't want to sit here and say that it's not complicated. The human body is very complicated and there's no linear path towards what you should be doing. A million different things can happen that we have to make adjustments on. But I would say just learning the proper mechanics behind like hinging your hips, learning how to bend over properly. Then from there, instead of just standing with both feet next to one another and hinging from there, maybe like what someone would use for a deadlift. Instead of doing that, we can get one foot behind the other and hinge the hips and then add some kind of rotational component in the rib cage. I know like it's hard to picture, but I would say staying out of one plane of motion. Don't just worry about bicep curls with both feet next to each other, shoulder pressing, rowing. Think about everything that you see people doing in the gym. It's always just one plane of motion. There's no rotation involved. The feet are usually standing right next to one another, and we're loading weight vertically, but we move horizontally. So when we walk, we're propelling forward.
Right.
So my glute needs to know how to initiate extension or hip extension. Imagine propelling off your foot and learning how to move forward.
Right.
And yeah, so traditional lifting isn't really going to take into consideration all the factors that you need. I know that doesn't really answer the question as far as like what you guys should be doing.
Yeah, no, it's not something that we can cover in like one webinar. But I know, like I said, you have some past webinars with more examples of how you work with clients and some of those movements that you can go into greater detail about. And which is what brings me to my next, point here is that our whole theme for this year's summit is movement is medicine. And that's something that from my personal experience working with you and just understanding the human body a little bit better and how it affects how we can work with CMT, how we can live and our quality of life. We think it's probably the most important thing that we can do for ourselves today.
Yeah.
And so can you tell me a little bit, what is movement is medicine? What does that mean to you? Do you agree with it? And yeah.
I absolutely agree with it. I mean, that's what I'm all about. Made for Motus. Motus means movement in Latin. So even the nonprofit organization, made for movement. I think that it's something that no matter what you are dealing with, whatever your physical capabilities are, you need to learn how to be the best you right now. And you need to take a progressive approach rather than waiting for maybe a cure to come out or some kind of medicine that you can take. Because even if that cure does come, you're still going to be in a situation where your body has adapted to kind of all of these strategies that it's created over time, and you're going to have to learn how to function better regardless. So the best time to do that is now. And I love that you guys are doing movement as medicine. I'm so happy I'm able to speak there and give my knowledge. It's to me, it's number one for anyone.
Right. And you've worked with other CMT patients who, have a wide spectrum of severity, from myself to Christina to I might drawing a blank here. But yeah, I mean, it's true though. It's the same principles whether you're walking or rolling. There's huge room for improvement, and that's why we're going to be holding the event at Ability 360, which is 100% adaptive facility. It's made for people with disabilities, so all the equipment, we're going to be doing a lot of things in the pool. We're going to be working with you, and we're also going to have one-on-one consultations free of charge. It's included in the price. That anybody who's coming to the event, contact me, and you can email me at estela@hnf-cure.org, and set up an appointment with Chris for a one-on-one to get in an evaluation and just go a little bit deeper into where to start, and start changing and improving your lifestyle a little bit better, and the way you move, and just the way you think, just the way you approach exercise, because a lot of it's counterintuitive. We've been programmed to think of exercise in a certain way our entire lives, and we've kind of, like you said, you hit a wall sometimes and you don't feel like you're getting any stronger, and you don't want to push yourself too hard. You have issues as far as fatigue and risk of injury. So this summit is really going to be a safe environment for us to kind of push our own boundaries and expand our own knowledge of what we're able to do.
Yep, absolutely. And I'll be going over the fundamentals that I've been talking about during this webinar, and kind of giving you, if you see it in person, it'll make much more sense than hearing it on here. So I'll be going through the fundamentals of, like I said, hinging the hips, breathing, using posture as a workout in itself, which is something that I won't even try and explain on here, but everyone will do it in person, and it'll be an awesome hands-on experience for everyone. And also I'll just announce it now that I'll be dropping a program, the first exercise instructional program for the CMT community. And Estela is in it. She helped out with the adaptive portion. So it'll be extremely detailed, and everything that I wasn't able to answer on this webinar, because you just need to see it for yourself, that will be in the program. And it'll be the perfect way for everyone listening to understand what to do to start off. Or even if you think that you're advanced, or even if you are advanced, there's still so much knowledge in there that I put in that will allow you to understand basic core principles to apply to what you're already doing, and you'll see more benefits from it. So, I can't wait to hopefully by the summit, I'll be able to release it. So hopefully on that day it'll be released.
That's great, because unfortunately we can't all have you in our gyms at home, and I think it's really important for everybody to understand, how to improve themselves functionally, and I think it's something that anyone who gets the program can do at home, and really benefit from. So Thank you. I know it's been a labor of love for you. I know it's not easy to put something like this together, and it's really never been done before. Like you are basically pioneering this whole effort, and coming from someone with CMT, I don't think there's a better expert available out there, because you have been on both sides of, the client aspect and the trainer side of it, and it's just it's really exciting to be able to be part of it. So thank you for putting all that work into it. Appreciate it.
Thank you for helping.
So tell us, where can everybody find you, and if they're not subscribed yet, where can they see some more of your videos and your training?
All right, so we have madeformotus.org is the website.
Okay.
We have a support group called Go Global. You can go on Facebook and look us up on there. I post a lot of videos on there, and then also when the program is released, I'll be releasing it through Go Global support group. I have Instagram at madeformotus. I have Instagram at _cytofit, and then cytofitness.com. So
okay.
Those are the two things I use for all my fitness related work, and I'll be doing future videos on tutorials of how to do exercises and talking about ways to help yourself as far as nutrition, anything that you can think of physiology related. I'll be touching on. There's a lot of stuff in the works right now, and yeah, it's gonna be awesome for everyone.
And you definitely have some great before and after videos there, where you can really see, the difference in the way your clients are walking and running, and those videos speak for themselves, because it's pretty significant, the difference in just 6 or 8 weeks. And then just one more thing, I think we had a few questions here that came in during the webinar. How did you manage the CMT while doing such extreme exercising? I think they're talking back to, when you were doing boxing and jiu-jitsu. Did it aggravate and overexert your CMT?
Yes, it did. It didn't make the CMT worse. It didn't make my symptoms worse. I started to learn my body. So when I was experiencing too much fatigue, I knew to back off a little bit. But like I said, I was young at the time, and I was definitely pushing it harder than I should have been. And in return, my body broke down. And that's why everything that I discussed happened. I didn't know when to back off. So a big part of managing CMT is to know when to pull back a little bit, and then know when to hit the gas a little bit as well.
Right.
And
I think that's where a lot of the nutrition comes in too, because you need that fuel, and that prompts us to our next question. Tell us a little bit about what nutrition suggestions do you have? What would you cut out to stop causing the inflammation?
So everyone is different. Everyone's going to react differently to food. So I would say basics is cut out gluten. I would cut out grains. I would experiment with dairy. A lot of people don't have the enzyme that allows them to digest dairy, which therefore it ends up becoming inflammatory.
Okay.
If you can get your hands on raw dairy, that's much better than pasteurized. And then treating your body as an experiment. So don't be afraid to take a food journal. Don't be afraid to eliminate certain foods that maybe you eat, and throw any food name in there. Maybe you eat an avocado and you sense some kind of brain fog or whatever the case might be. A reaction doesn't always mean that you're going to break out into hives or be sick to your stomach. It could be anything. So understand that you need to treat your body as an experiment and slowly figure out what it is that you need, and that's the best way to go about it. There's really no right or wrong with any of this, and that's where a lot of these misconceptions come into play. With whether it's food, whether it's exercise, it's what works, what's going to work for you. Obviously, there's some fundamentals that we need to abide by, processed foods out, junk food out, all of that stuff.
Sugar.
Yeah. So sugar, processed sugar, but fruit and carbohydrates break down into sugar. So we can't say all sugar. So, processed sugar, if you just use your intuition, use your gut, sometimes you're eating something not so good, then you know that you shouldn't be doing that. And again, slowly you take out those food groups that you shouldn't be having. You find out what it is that's going to work for you. You create a journal, and then you're further on your way towards being more functional and being healthier.
Gotcha. Okay, so somebody asked, what books should people read?
Oh man, caught me off guard with this one. All right. So we have Anatomy Trains by Thomas Myers is a good one. I think Evolve, maybe we could link these after. I have a bunch, but I can't remember all the names right now. Evolve to Move, I think, is a good one. And then I think it's called Evolve to Move. I'll put a link in after.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of stuff that you can read, maybe not even necessarily books, but a lot of just articles. I would say beyond books now, we have so many podcasts, we have so many articles, we have people of all different backgrounds kind of speaking on what it is that they do,
right,
and how it'll benefit you. And then we have to be able to dissect all of that and determine what tools out of those things are you going to use. So for me, I have a background in so many different methodologies and so many different practices of exercise. And I never confined myself to one of those things. For me, it was figuring out, okay, this tool helped me out here. This tool is going to help them out from this methodology. This is going to help from here. And then I kind of combined it all together. And again, I think it's just making yourself an experiment in a way.
Yeah, it's true though. You can't really rely on just, hearsay or what your doctor says or, what works well for someone else. You really have to constantly be testing it out on yourself,
Right.
and just improving as you go along slowly, and just noticing when you feel better, when you need to rest, and also not beating yourself up when you get tired and fatigued, because a lot of us kind of put ourselves down for that. But rest is, you talk a lot about the circadian rhythm in your webinars, and the basic need for sun exposure, and
Yes.
different types of vitamins, and certain types of water. So, you are just a plethora of information. And I definitely highly recommend you guys checking out his website and his Facebook pages and going through his past videos, because there's a lot of great information on there. And we also did about a year ago, last summer, we did a great webinar with a nutritionalist, Alana, who we went over nutrition for the nervous system. So we go really in depth as far as inflammation, what you should be staying away from, what you should try and incorporate into your body. So check that out. And that's on hnf-cure.org. And you click on webinars, and that's under the past webinars. You can check that out as well. So yeah, I really thank you so much for your time, and for all the work you do for our community, and for being part of the summit. And I hope everybody considers coming to stay the weekend with us in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona.
It's going to be awesome.
2 days of back-to-back workshops and activities and talks, and meals are included. We're going to have some social time with a rooftop party, and it's going to be great. There's going to be a lot of connection there. It's going to be a great opportunity to meet others with CMT that you can relate to, form new friendships, and just have fun and learn. So definitely check it out, guys, on our website. All right, so thank you so much, and we'll check back with everybody soon. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Have a good night.
Thanks, Estela. Take care.
All right.